Today on the podcast, I have Ram Ganesan. Ram is a CEO of a company called Kaboom.ai. It's a CRM, but it's really geared towards existing sales. So you have your existing customer and you're basically trying to sell them additional services and really make sure that you're aligned with their success. Ram has a great background. He talks a little bit about his growing up in India and then being an electrical engineer and then really getting into being a sales guy. And so that doesn't happen with most of our entrepreneurs. And he talks a little bit about the secrets of success there and what he's learned, as well as kind of going deep on where he thinks AI is going and how they think they can leverage it in their industry. So I really enjoyed this conversation with Ram, and I hope you do too. Ram, welcome to the podcast. I appreciate you making the time.
Todd, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, good. Well, why don't we start off a little bit about your background, how you ended up. Today, you're CEO of Kaboom.ai, and so we'll get to that in a second, but I'm sure that wasn't just a linear process, and you woke up one day and said, this is what I'm going to go do. If I remember correctly, you started off in electrical engineer. Is that where your kind of traditional training was from?
Kaboom, it's a full circle, because
Okay.
the story from childhood, which literally goes kaboom. So
Okay.
I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, just beginning to understand magnetism and electricity and things like that. And I learned that you could tie a wire around a nail and pass electric current through it and make it a magnet. So that was my first, I would say, experiment as an engineer that I did unsupervised. My parents were away at work and doing their merry thing. So I just took this and essentially plugged a wire and to the outlet. And guess what happened?
What could go wrong?
Kaboom! Right? Like, fortunately, the breakers. You're talking about Mumbai, India, in I would say roughly late 70s, early 80s, and the lights went out, and there was a little smoky feeling for some time. And I was terrified. I'm like, oh my God, I broke the house potentially. I'm in deep, deep, deep trouble. Right? My mom comes home and she sees this. I'm like, she kind of defers to dad. She's like, this is a dad thing. I don't know what you did, but clearly things are not working right now in the home and whatever. My dad comes from work. I'm expecting a bright, a nice, a warm spanking from him and a scolding from him. And he asks me, and then he looks around and he sees like one fuse blackened a little and like clearly burnt out. And then he starts laughing. And I'm wondering, like, am I not in trouble? And he's like, dude, like he explained first of all, he says that to make a magnet, you need DC current. You don't need, you can't do AC current. And you don't need 120, 250 volts. You need like a battery. And so, not the end of the world, but son, this could have been a very dangerous thing and you could have hurt yourself. So guess what he did? Next day, he took me to the hobby store and bought me a full-blown electronics and electrical kit. And he's like, this is how you learn about electricity and magnetism. And that was my essential initiation of from my dad as an engineer, right? So what I thought was a stupid thing that would get me into deep trouble and went kaboom, literally, was the beginning of me as an engineer. So I've always been a curious person, like to tinker, break things. I would tear apart our TV or Panasonic cassette tape recorder. I'll try to hack things together. I'll take speakers and components, and India didn't have a Radio Shack, but there were our own markets, if you will, where you could get capacitors and components and things like that. So I would put stuff together, and that was how I essentially found myself doing electrical engineering through the latter part of high school and college. And through that, of course, computers kind of go hand in hand, and I kind of dabbled in programming and operating systems and things like that. So I just, even though I graduated in electrical engineering, my career started as a software engineer. And the 90s were a ripe time in India, where we were transitioning as a country to become a software powerhouse, if you will, right? And
Yep.
there's a lot of resource demand and everything else. And the natural next stop was working for multinational companies, and then made my way to America, working at IBM briefly while putting myself through B school. And then truly starting to, I would say, I've been in and around New York City forever. I've been in America since the mid 90s, and always been an East Coaster, if you will, but always
Hmm.
been in software and technology and associated work. So that's my background. So been in America since the mid '90s, working in various progressive roles in leading software and IT or technology teams, and then decided to jump onto the deep end of the entrepreneurial pool. Started a services company called Surian Technologies in 2012. Did fairly well. Exited to private equity in 2018. Worked with the acquiring entity for a few years, running a P&L for digital experience there. We grew the team from nothing. It was just me in my home office to over 1,000 people. Well, before I was done. So it was a both. It was more profitable, I would say, for the private equity I had
Yeah.
than it was for me. But I wouldn't complain. I think I did fairly
Hmm.
well, and the team did fairly well. And we also built a wonderful, I would say, work culture, a dynamic, and a knowledge base, and also some great client relationships as a process. But what that also did was it exposed and slowly transformed me from an engineer to a salesperson. And I learned that there is certain, I would say, gaps in the sales process that that can be systematized. And as an engineer, you would want to build systems for everything. You want to
Sure.
modularize everything. Ergo, now we have Kaboom, right, which is a specific problem that I saw when I was essentially doing during the earnout phase of Surian being acquired by Ancora, is that existing accounts are not the same sales motion as getting a new client. It's a very different set of actions. It's a very different set of cadence and rhythm. And it's also very amenable to automation because you have a body of knowledge and data that you get with an existing account. When you're prospecting, it's a slightly different research process, it's a slightly different qualification process. But when with existing accounts, and I kind of did this in many ways to really benefit myself and the team because we were given certain growth and EBITDA targets
Hmm.
without additional investment to the business, right? So we had to kind of grow in place. So how do you do that? So we had no choice but to click into our existing accounts, and we were pleasantly surprised that it unlocked revenue like we could have never imagined. And by the time we were done, we were almost 4 or 5x in revenue and 7 to 8x in EBITDA with no investment put in, right?
Right.
And
Yep.
there, the light bulb went off in my head saying that why is this not being done by Salesforce or HubSpot or any of these CRMs? And then I realized that they're primarily built for pipeline and opportunity management. They're not really built for relationship management. So that's the gap. And along comes Chat GPT and the generative AI explosion and everything else. It was a perfect confluence of, I would say, timing and an aha moment that led to the creation of Kaboom.
Well, it's interesting. I ran some teams at Concur that basically did selling to existing client base, and I think I was there for 5 years, and we went from 200,000 to 30 million over that 5 years. And so,
Exactly.
I think one of the key things that's important in that one is you have to have products to sell, right? And so, and I've got a bunch of companies that we work with that are starting to basically not just have their first product, but they're basically finding ancillary services to put on there. And you're right, it's a totally different sell. It's warm. They're already getting value, and if there's other problems to go solve, then that's super. They're interested in talking to it. What's interesting sometimes, though, Ram, as you know, is it the same buyer? And are you really trying to connect an ecosystem so their retention is higher, right? That's some of the goals that you're trying to do. Not only are you trying to increase maybe profit margins on this client, but you're also trying to make it more sticky, so that basically they have more tentacles into the organization, which makes it harder to rip out and compare you apples to apples to a competitor.
Absolutely. I think one is, like you said, it's warm. You have the relationship, you have the you have the legal paperwork, right? Sometimes that itself can take months. Sometimes, for one client, it took a year for me, right? And you're in the door, and you're also right that there's not just one buyer. There are multiple buyers and multiple stakeholders in complex, especially, and the industry that we're targeting is professional services, but I can potentially hypothesize that this applies to many other industries as well, healthcare or defense or other things. Multiple stakeholders, and as you mentioned, most likely you have multiple product lines and offerings, right? So there's white space mapping that needs to be done. There's relationship mapping that needs to be done. There's account intelligence that needs to be gathered from both external and internal sources. So you have earnings transcripts, you have market news, you have competitor news on the external side, but internally, there's emails, potentially requests for proposals and meeting notes and even executive briefings that are just living in silos, potentially not really being summarized. So that's where we're seeing the opportunity, is that a good account manager would do this by a set of really good habits. They'll do their homework. They'll check up. They're following up with the right cadence. They know the pulse of the organization. They kind of understand the politics of the organization. But what if we democratize that with applied AI, right? So that's the genesis for this. But you're right. It's also very refreshing to go from whatever you said, 200,000 to 30 million, because you've applied those best practices over and over again across multiple accounts, and it's finding gold in your own backyard. And that's what our theme is. That's what we say with Kaboom you can do. You can find gold in your own backyard.
Yeah, and I think maybe it goes back to just even a simple philosophy where a lot of companies, as they think about this, is kind of got this land and expand, right? You find some value proposition that has product market fit, and then basically you earn trust, and then you basically layer on these additional services. So the average revenue per customer goes up over time, and usually the margin goes up, and maybe there's some stickiness to it. I think one of the things that maybe is inferred in what you're saying is we always used to look at it and say, how do I make this person the hero in their organization, right? How do you basically make them interested in their career opportunities and growth based on the services that we're doing? And so you almost have to be a consultant to understand their business well enough to basically create value in it. It's not about selling, right? I mean, in a lot of cases, it's about explaining what they're doing, but putting it, like you said, in the context of their business.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it any better. Understanding your client and appreciating their pain point is central. The sale almost happens as a consequence of that, right? But if you demonstrate that listening, that trusted advisor, that empathy, the business just manifests over time, and it will come. You just have to be patient, and it will also expand over time. But you've got to be there always, not to look at your next sale or where your next dollar is going to come from, but more like, how can I help you be successful in your role? How can you help your company save money or increase top line or be more compliant, whatever, right? So continue offering that kind of support and advice. The business will manifest automatically, and that will be always lucrative and sticky.
Yeah, so I think a key thing that you're saying in there is you got to create value, right? I mean, ultimately, that's what you're talking about. I think one of the sticky points in some of this is you may not be working from an account management level with somebody who is a signer, right? And so you're basically, in most cases, a layer down. And what you're trying to do is basically influence them, give them the information to basically influence a decision maker and somebody who could sign. And so sometimes that's difficult because there's tactical things that they need to get done for their job. But I think for you to continue to sell and create more value in it, you need to create that opportunity to get a business case to somebody who can actually sign.
Correct. And one of the features that we worked on is called relationship mapping. It's really understanding that, first of all, it's a team sport. A relationship is a team sport. It's not an individual sport. So yes, in all likelihood, you're working with either a signatory, but not necessarily the C-level executive who's got the actual purse strings. You might not even be working with the signatory, to your point, right? The person is just an influencer. And you need to map that relationship. And you need to understand that the layers of those relationship actually matter, right? It's not as much, people say that we need to understand the org chart. Yes, maybe you need to understand the org chart, but really you need to understand the levels that you're playing, right? And you could have a manager interacting with an engineer on the other side. You could have the account manager interacting with somebody at the director or VP level, and then somebody at the C-suite speaking to the C-suite in your company, right? And all of those relationships need to have a certain quality and a quantity. Both the cadence matters as well as the quality of the relationship, right? And to be able to really understand that evolve over time, right? And we capture that, right? So we actually color code that, right? So we have green and red and yellow for that, like to do that. And also the thickness of the line shows the cadence of the relationship, right? So you kind of know how often do you meet this person and how often are you mapped to this, or for that matter, you don't have connective tissue with certain levels of the
Right.
organization. But being able to tee up the right level of influence at the right level, at the right time, sorry, to ensure that they are able to make the case for you on your behalf to the right authority and get that deal done is where I think the true account manager shines. And having a solid pulse of the relationship and being able to demonstrate the value proposition in a succinct manner so that you don't create additional work for that stakeholder is where the value gets unlocked.
Yeah, I agree. And so what we've talked a little bit about is there's a combination of people and intuitiveness and empathy, and there's some business, like acumen in this. But then where does the AI fall? Where can you basically fuse kind of the AI components that make sense to do that, but do it in a way that basically enriches the communication and the experience?
Yeah. So we're living in a data deluge, right? So the AI helps you kind of sift through that. And especially, I would say, with unstructured data. A lot of the relationship, uh, I would say, nuances and subtleties exists in unstructured data, emails, meeting notes, market news, an earnings call transcript, right? All of this is usually documents or video transcripts or audio transcripts or websites, right? And what does a good account manager do? Read through all of this, line this up, structure it potentially in a document or make notes, and then kind of play it back in at the right place at the right time to your advantage. What if the AI does this 24 by 7 on an automated basis and tee it up to you in terms of a nudge, right? So that's how we deliver the payload in at Kaboom, right? The AI essentially packages all of this unstructured data and sends it to you in a nice bite-sized manner so that you can then consume it and be proactive and be much more productive. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're literally doing the rounds. You're calling all the people around and you're doing all this homework in preparation for that meeting. Not just that, the AI is also smart enough to say that, hey, it's time for you to meet with Todd because Todd is either about to make a decision on this RFP or you're based on my recollection, your frequency with Todd should be once every month, and it's already 45 days. So it'll kind of nudge you to actually set up a meeting with Todd and then also give you the materials in terms of what you'll discuss with them, right? So that's where the AI comes in. It makes you much more productive and proactive. And this also elevates the game of the less experienced account manager, right? Now, if I'm being nudged, my game gets leveled up, right? And that's how you unlock more revenue with all of your accounts, not just with the star account managers.
So let's kind of pivot a little bit because I think we were talking about this even as we got on about just personalization in AI, right? And so what you're really talking about is building some rules and some structure around engagement and really how to go do it. But what's interesting to me is both on the client side and on the account management side, we all come with propensities, right? I had account managers that were way better sellers than they were services of the company, right? So they cared less about NPS and they cared way more about making their number. And so you had to watch and manage those people differently. And to your point, you have people that have risen through the ranks that maybe started with SMB, smaller clients. They moved to mid-market. Now they want to get to enterprise. And they're trying to figure out, okay, well, enterprise is very different than kind of mid-market is, right? Correct. And so the dynamics. So do you think over time we get to building almost this meta layer of profile information about tendencies and the way you work so that basically if you and I are both account managers and we have strengths and weaknesses, the system is basically prodding us in different ways based on areas that we do have strengths and areas that we have maybe some opportunities?
That's fantastic. And I think you're potentially scratching at some parts of our future product roadmap there, and some of it is already built, right? But I think that's a great point that you make there. So let me try to play it back in terms of what we have today and what we're working towards, right? So what we have today is health scores, and the health score is a composite of the relationship. It's not just the financial metrics, the financial health, but also the quality of your relationship. Are there too many escalations going on? Are there, downtrending CSAT numbers, et cetera, right? So, and it's a composite health score that every client of ours gets to decide what is it that matters that they want to measure, right? And this health score is dynamically computed by the AI so that you have that weighted score to make some decisions. So that's one component. But what we're also building now is something called the signals. The signals is kind of alluding to what you're talking about, is that how do you find the propensity of where this relationship is going based on the buyer or based on the industry you're in or based on the size of the client, right? So these signals need to be fine-tuned further, I would say, to the problem or the task at hand. So otherwise a signal is just going to become noise, right? Because you're just bombarding somebody with signals. It needs to be in context. And the AI really needs to get better to be able to truly, I would say, suss out the context to add value. And I would say signal the right thing at the right time. And this, I feel, is going to be a thing that we will get better as we learn over time. We're relatively new in the market. We've been in market for around 6 months. That we can model it for certain industries. For example, we just started working with the architecture industry, right? They have a very different type of DNA to, say, MSPs, right? And just the set of prompts that we are asking for that industry are very different, but they're the same kind of, I would say, end goal of maintaining a great relationship and being able to retain it and also expand it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you guys basically use models that are third party, like ChatGPT type stuff and APIs, or are you building it on mostly open source type of stuff or homegrown?
So we are model agnostic and cloud agnostic. What we've realized is that because we are sourcing a lot of internal data, we do get a lot of security objections, if you will, of various levels. We are a SOC 2 certified company, et cetera, et cetera. But some clients are like, I don't want that data to leave my perimeter. So we're like, no problem. We will deploy this in your own private cloud, and you can bring your own LLM key to this, right? So in that sense, we're model agnostic. But our technology also has its own inference, and we have RAG and other proprietary stuff that we've built that essentially adds the secret sauce on top of it, right? So we're not just a LLM wrapper, but we are a complete experience that is tailored at specific use cases and problems in the professional services industry.
Don't you think this is, I mean, we've got probably 20, 25 years ahead of us where a lot of these organizations, enterprises are basically having all this data that's siloed and basically surfacing it into these RAGs databases with, LLMs to basically help surface that information in a way that makes sense. It just seems like there's so much data locked up in the enterprise that's not very usable today, right? Even like people building Confluence pages and stuff, what they really want is I'm on the phone with a client and I'm asking about an integration. I want to know that now. I don't want to have to go to the Confluence page and see this integration and then this version of it. I just want to be able to type it in natural language and figure it out.
Absolutely. Unstructured data is where the unlock is, right? But you need to be able to source it and collect it in the right place, right? Yes, you're talking about the Gleans of the world where you have an enterprise LLM search motion, right? But I think it's only when you get too generalistic, also, right? People are also talking about Copilot in the same way. We also see that it's too broad, too generic, that it doesn't give you the precise answer that you're looking for. When it comes to things like account management, I think you need to be a little more fine-grained, right? Which is why we kind of curate the sources that we work with, both external and internal. And we also nudge you so that you're not really looking for it. Hopefully you have the information proactively handed to you, like a briefing doc. And then, of course, you can still query this thing. But to your point, the unlock for the enterprise data is in all this unstructured data. And it's more in internal data than in external data. So account intelligence, true account intelligence, will come when you kind of mix your internal and external data sources and create this body of intelligence that you can proactively query to just get the answer when you're looking for it.
So what do you think Kaboom looks like in 5 years, right? We've got these technologies that are being used. You've talked about some of your forward-looking roadmap stuff, but what does that experience really look like? And how do you think, if you had to future cast a little bit, where does this end up, that experience really look like?
So two things. One, from a product perspective, we will be the account operating system. So we will not just be a sales and expansion sales tool. I think we will be everything for existing accounts, from customer success to project or operational delivery management to financial, even dashboarding, forecasting, and things like that. So our vision is fairly wide when it comes to an existing relationship. So truly, from that perspective, we would have built out all those feature sets. But more importantly, I think the one thing that I really feel that Kaboom can sign up for very soon, I don't even think we have to wait 5 years, is top line outcome. We're going to tie our pricing model to essentially saying that we're going to help you increase your top line with your existing account base, period. Okay? Because we are so confident in our ability to do that and unlock that. And we're already starting to get enough data points to make that a repeatable model. And if we don't, we'll share your pain. We're going to price it in such a manner that it'll inflict pain on us if you don't grow. So the outcome as a service, as people are talking about, we're going to deliver that.
So I love the outcome-based pricing, right? I think that's great. I think it does create some challenges. Like you and I both lived through, 2007, 2008. We had a lot of, long-term contracts that were with big Fortune 5,000 companies that all came to us to renegotiate, right? They were laying off people. They knew they had the contractual obligation. And so, those are outliers in our careers. But like if you were building a business that was like that, we had floors in all of our contracts. And they were long-term contracts. And so, for them to say we stopped traveling whether it's the pandemic or whether it's financial layoffs, that would impact a company like ours, like Concur, quite a bit. Are you willing to accept that type of risk, or would you basically frame it in a way that's more the things that you control?
I think we're not willing to go all the way, at least right now, right? But we're going to inflict enough pain on ourselves to show that we're in it with you to win it, right?
You're partners.
Yes, we're partners, right? So at the same time, I will have other stakeholders to manage, like my team and my employees and the other things, right? So it's always a tough balance, right? But we want to sign up in such a manner, in a very clear manner where we are saying that if you experience break-even growth, don't pay us full price, because breaking even means that we've not added value.
Right.
If you experience top-line growth that is to target, pay us what you signed up for. If you exceed target, please give us a bonus. But if you experience negative growth, pay us less, way less than what you signed up for. I mean, of course, there will be a floor to that so that we don't go all the way to zero or we start giving money back to our customers. But, that's where our thinking is. But I feel that it's enough of an articulation of the skin in the game that we're putting in with our clients that people will get intrigued and get excited about it.
It'll be interesting to see. We did some user-based pricing, so it was an outcome. But we were selling into CFOs and basically the finance side of it. They like predictability,
Right.
and so that's one of the things. So I think they like your model, but the variability on that from a forecast of Wall Street or whatever it happens to be it becomes a little bit more tricky. And so it'll be interesting to see how those conversations go. On the top level, people love it. On the bottom level, where you start to say, how do I operationalize this? And I'm a publicly traded company, that makes it a little bit more tricky.
Correct. Well, as a product, we're not that expensive, honestly, right? So
Okay.
predictability to our pricing is it's not going to be a challenge in the outset. When we become a wider, maybe more
Portfolio.
enterprise class portfolio product, yes, the pricing will be different, and there might be some different discussions. This is something that is new to the industry in general, and it's new to me for sure. But what I like putting this model out there is with AI first, we feel that we can scale at a much faster rate and then manage risk for the business, right? So that's why outcome-based pricing is possible more in today's paradigm. But the other thing is clearly demonstrating that we're partners with you through good and bad times is what I want to get to. Now, if that will require some tweaking to align with negotiation or industry or legalities of it, sure, that's going to be a learning experience that we'll all have to go through.
So let me maybe take this in a little bit different area. I had this idea, and I wrote a Substack article about it a while ago. But it was this concept of how do we create an agent that basically helps young salespeople? So go back to finding logos. Let's just make it simple. But when you see a new founder and they're starting to do sales, they basically throw up on the prospect on here's all the wonderful features, right? They don't do enough discovery. They don't basically understand kind of like what is the pain that they're really trying to go solve, right. And then basically do a custom demo, right? And so what I really liked about this idea was saying if you could tie this to a CRM and they knew kind of where you were in the stage of discovery, if you were in discovery, evaluation, or close, just simple, can you basically give them good nudges and coaching? And so I think that's fine. We need that for our early stage folks. But the part that I thought was kind of unique about this is you over time start to build up a repository of skills.
Correct.
And when you go to a new company, you essentially start again. Yes, you have the skills that you understand, but why can't you take some of that non-IP learnings with you? Whether it's basically an interface. So what we were kind of thinking about was this tool could just follow you, right? You get rid of some of the stuff that was IP that was specific to the company you were selling for, but you went to the next company and then you had this repository of all the experiences you did, right? And so if you're still selling an SMB, which maybe this guy was, then a lot of those lessons and nudges and tweaks get modified a little bit for the new environment you're in, but it basically builds this layer of partnership as you go through your sales career, and you're taking a lot of that information with you. Today, how's that happen, right? It's just basically the experiences that you internalize. But if you could basically have sales enablement that says this new guy comes in, and instead of getting ramped up in 2 quarters, he's ramped up in 1 quarter because all we're doing is adding the new stuff to him based on all of the history he has. And we ramp so many people at Concur. It's just that's a huge cost that you have to go do,
sure.
And they all come with a set of experiences that's pretty uneven, and you have to basically do sales enablement to get them back up and running, and then see if they're a productive person. And so this is a little bit flipping the script, right? Where it's like saying, yes, you're adding value to the company, and I'm using the tool, but like, what do I get if I leave this company and I go on to somebody else? I also thought it was pretty interesting is that a sales opportunity, right? Where you go to the next place. Now, all I'm doing is connecting you and saying, you should have this same tool we had over here to sell over here. And basically you just keep propagating it as just people move around. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. You've really challenged me, and it's a head scratching question, honestly. It's an amazing way. I think what you're describing is potentially like a LinkedIn subscription that I can take to my next job, right?
But it's an agent that basically learns about you and builds that kind of profile and helps you in this sales or account management role.
Correct. The only problem is, which is something we need to figure out, right? Like, because my client is paying for the subscription of Kaboom, if you will, right? Not the account rep. Let's say we get past that legality of it, right? I think we just need to figure out what is not proprietary and what is unique to the account rep that they can carry along, just like their LinkedIn profile, right? Like the LinkedIn profile is theirs, right? So we need to figure out what can be, so almost like there needs to be a B2C social network type of component to Kaboom that is all these learnings or Scratchpad or something that is contained within this that is almost free. It has to be free, right? It has to be like,
I don't know. I think as a sales rep or an account manager, I'd probably pay something personally for it to retain all that data, right? Because it is basically what the deals that I've worked on, the situations that I've seen in the past, like a lot of that is not IP, but it's basically that learning and nuance that you lose as you move on, and that was 15 deals ago.
Correct. But I can't still store my client's contact information or client's
right. So you have to break them apart.
That has to be broken apart, right? So it needs to be non-proprietary, ideally legally separate component that is a value addition to the individual, not to the organization, that they feel like, okay, I'm going to refer to this at my next job and my next job after that and after that, right? So I'll just hold on to it. The best way I can describe to that is like my LinkedIn profile for now. But without professing to solve this on the fly, Todd, I would say it's a brilliant, it's a brilliant thought. I need to really mull this over, but what you're presenting me with is a unique, challenging requirement that potentially could make a B2C version of Kaboom that would be available for one and all to kind of take it across their career.
And what I like about it too is it actually is a sales tool for you, right? It might be, right? Because then you get it to the next company, and then what do? You go sell them on that, right? You got 3 people that are using this in a B2C thing. Now let's go and sell you this. And so
we track their movements too. So we know that somebody moved from point A to point B, so we can immediately just see that, right? So I think it's brilliant. I just am not able to fully understand the product evolution there, because it's really B2C than the enterprise B2B structure that we have right now, or the SMB B2B. But I think it's a great idea.
I think the last piece that I'd say that I keep coming back to is AI should give us an opportunity to build kind of these custom profiles about your tendencies and your experiences. And I think software in general, the way that we've done product management is generally a one size fits all, right? It's a workflow that starts here and ends here. And basically there's not a lot of nuance in the way that you kind of go through it. And what we really should be getting from a lot of these tools over time is really a customized experience. I would love to see that, like, basically there's a meta layer that's about Todd, and that could be about my travel, that could be about my health, that could be about my professional, it could be about my work, my time and work, it could be about the things I want to do with my family. And basically I could unlock that to the different services that I'm using to basically enrich that experience. And so I don't know if we'll ever get there, but like, to me, that's a promise that it seems like could be there over time that would make whatever scenarios in how we work with software an enriched experience.
Yeah, I think you're talking about micro personalization to the extreme, right? I'm already seeing ChatGPT do that to some extent in its inference, right? When I ask it contextual question when I'm logged in versus just opening up a browser somewhere and asking it a question. If I
Yeah.
ask him, like, can you describe Ram Ganesan to me, right? When I'm logged in, because I've already given it a year and a half of history, it has a completely different set of answers. And when I log in anonymously in the browser and do that, it just gives whatever's publicly available, if you will.
Sure.
So I see that as the natural next evolution, but you need to get it to a point where it's Jarvis to Iron Man, right?
Yeah.
It is
Right.
your
Right.
alter ego. It's really helping you make sound decisions and nudging you towards getting better. And wherever you seem to be either faltering or wavering, it kind of sets you right. I think that's the
Sure.
true value addition of what the current AI models can bring to the table.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit. You have gone from electrical engineering to kind of technical coding to CEO, business, and sales. One of the things that we talk about that's kind of important in our program is no black boxes. Mostly, most people come to us and they're either one of the three. They're either a product person, they're a salesperson, or they're technical. They're usually one of those three. But like the getting them to understand the other two in a way that's good enough. Like you don't need to be an expert, but you can't have a black box in your organization from a startup perspective. There's just too much risk in it.
Correct.
And so maybe talk to me a little bit about your journey going from a technical coder to basically being a CEO today, but like being a sales guy. And that like I did some of this as well, and so I have some opinions, but I'm curious about your journey and basically how you did it, because lots of people look at that and they say that's scary.
It was scary when I was entering into the world of sales, I would say, to some extent, right? I call myself the accidental salesman, right? Even though when I look at my personality and my aptitude in the mirror, right, it is that of a salesperson more than anything else. One
Sure.
of the best compliments I got was one of my clients, like saying that you're one of the best salesmen I've met. I was just over the moon, like to receive that compliment because it just came out of the blue, unsolicited. And because I don't see myself as a salesperson, I see myself as a problem solver. Uh, and I think knowing your craft well, so like you said, no black boxes, right? I understand what the product's dark underbelly is, right? We understand what are the product choices and the engineering choices that went into that. That makes me a better salesperson because I can sell in a more confident manner, and I know where I'm embellishing versus where I know I'm taking that leap, knowing that the team can cover for me, right? And I think that's one thing. In my heart, I'm an engineer. Okay, um, uh, but let me put it this way: in my brain, I'm an engineer, but in my heart, I'm a salesperson. Because when I speak to my clients, I'm looking to solve problems for them. I'm looking to truly, I would say, understand pain and solve for that pain, as opposed to just selling them to a number, right? The number tends to be consequential. Sometimes in the early days, I would sell it to my own detriment. Like I would not really look at the number and it would not be a sound business decision. And then, of
Hmm.
course, then I have to face the wrath of my team for not pricing the deal right, right? So then eventually I understood that everybody understands that a business is a for-profit entity and you have to make a profit and that it's fair to price it right. And so I think everybody who not everybody's cut out for entrepreneurship, but when you start a business from scratch, you have to do everything from assembling furniture to doing QuickBooks to
Yeah.
doing complex legal contracts and working with lawyers and everything else. um, I truly explored the boundaries of my capabilities in each of these areas. And I actually enjoyed all of it. There is not one area, including things like HR or financial accounting or tax compliance, right, that I've disliked to do. All right. So, but I would say what I have the most fun doing is solving problems.
Yeah, and I guess I'd maybe draw a little bit out of you. I think about engineers being process oriented, right? There's a series of steps.
Correct.
And I think when I went from, engineering to sales, it was basically an eye opener to me that like it's just a series of steps, right? Nobody makes a binary decision to buy something. It's a series of micro steps. And so if you understand the framework and the series of steps that they go through, it's not crazy. It's just work, right? And a discipline. And I think my engineering brain was just like, okay, like I can deconstruct this. And you're probably like this too, where it's like every problem, that's what you're doing. You're deconstructing, you know where they are today, you know where the outcome they want. It's basically the in-between. You're trying to figure out incremental steps to say, am I right? I got you to this gate. Does that make sense? Now do we get to the next gate? And eventually that leads to a sale, or that leads to a resolution, or that really gets to my tax problem is solved, or I have a strategy.
Fantastic. What you call as micro steps, I call them mini closes, right?
Okay.
I reward myself. I say that, okay, if I get my client to agree to this, it's a mini close. So I feel like I won something that day. So I call them mini close leading to the big close. Sometimes you have 7 mini closes and you still lose the big deal. It's okay. But at least for that day, you can hold on to that mini close, right?
Sure.
But you couldn't have said it better, that we engineers tend to break down sales into step by step. It's a project management problem or an engineering problem. You have to take 7 or 8 steps to get to an informed decision, and it's your job to help your buyer to get to that informed decision.
Yeah, so maybe just wrapping this up, like if you had to go back to maybe when you were 20 or when you were starting kind of your entrepreneurial journey, and like think about, people that are out there today that are they're going from 0 to 1, right? They got an idea, they see how the world needs to change, they have a lot of passion. What are some of the lessons learned that you would basically share on from your journey that you think would be relevant to early stage founders?
So 2 things I would say. One is focus, right? Focus is very important. That's one big mistake that I made in my journey. Like I did too many things for too many clients because you wanted business, right? I think you need the ability to say, no, I'm not going to do this is equally important. It's a hard decision, but you have to learn to do that. It's a discipline that the earlier that so 20-year-old Ram, if I were to advise, I would say, as much as you said yes and you took initiative, learn to say no where you should have said no, right? That's one thing. And the second thing is the anxiety that we all have, especially as entrepreneurs, I feel is just self-inflicted. It's not as dark and not as scary as you make it. And another entrepreneur actually mentioned that to me, and she said one thing, she's like, just say it to yourself, you're going to be okay, right?
Yeah.
And everybody out there, right? There's a bunch of other younger entrepreneurs were all, you could see that like, it's not okay. It sucks right now, right? But the anxiety is more inside our own system rather than being real, right? Of course, businesses go through ups and downs and cash flow challenges and everything, but our mind is our own worst enemy. So we just amplify that anxiety. So I would just go back to my younger self saying that it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine.
Well, those are 2 good ones. I think both of those are difficult to do in early stage founders, especially on focus. Everybody's trying to chase a deal. And then, and usually you lose a lot of discipline, right? Like we always talk about like ICP and a beachhead, and you're really trying to go after that. And people are like, well, they just said if I add this feature and if I, found this client. And so I do think you're right on the focus piece. And the anxiety one's good. I think that it's just difficult sometimes to like see forest through the trees. And so I think those are really good ones to kind of leave this with. Ram, I appreciate you spending some time with us. I appreciate you sharing your vision for Kaboom as well as just your experience. I think there's a lot here to leverage, and I appreciate the opportunity.
That's great, Todd. And thanks for including me all the way from Rapid City, South Dakota. I hope to visit you someday. And
that'd be great.
And if your travels bring you to New York City, you have a friend to have a beer with.
I'd love to do that. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Take care, Todd.
Thanks for listening to Startup Stories from the Treehouse. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, follow, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you found our conversation helpful, leave a review. It really helps other founders discover our show. For more insight and episode summaries, don't forget to subscribe to the Wildfire Labs Substack. We appreciate your support and can't wait to share more stories with you next time.